The storm was supposed to be a simple warning on the radio, not the beginning of a night that would change 2 lives forever. Long before the truck froze on that mountain road, long before the rescue lights broke through the blizzard, something else happened first. A small moment of compassion that would melt a winter far colder than the snow outside. It started with a favor, a promise, and a young man who never said no to the people he cared about. He had always been the responsible one, the one who showed up when others stepped back. Maybe that was why his best friend trusted him more than anyone. Maybe that was why, on a freezing winter afternoon, his phone rang with a call he didn't expect. Adam sounded shaken. His voice cracked as if the cold had reached him even though he was miles away at his college dorm. He told him that his mom was stranded at a retreat site high in the mountains and couldn't drive down in the storm. Adam begged him for help. "Bro, please, Mom hates driving in weather like this. Can you pick her up? I swear I'll make it up to you." He didn't even hesitate. Of course he would go. Of course he would help her. That was the kind of friend he was, loyal, steady, protective. The sky darkened fast as he drove up the winding road, thick snowflakes hitting the windshield so hard they looked like the sky was being erased. He tightened both hands on the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. The truck shuddered under the weight of the wind, and for a moment he wondered if he had made a mistake coming alone. But then he remembered Adam's voice, the worry in it, the fear for someone he loved. He pressed the gas and kept going. By the time he reached the lodge, the world had turned into a blur of white. The porch light glowed softly through the storm, and that was when he saw her, Adam's mother. Standing under the wooden overhang, brushing snow from her coat, waving her gloved hands with the relief of someone who had been waiting far too long. She climbed inside the truck with a grateful exhale, her breath fogging the air. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I thought I'd be stuck here all night." He smiled, trying to hide the tension in his shoulders. "Don't worry, we'll be home soon." It felt like the beginning of a calm drive home, but it was. That was the last normal moment either of them would have for hours. The storm grew sharper, turning the world outside into a roaring wall of white. She kept glancing at him with the quiet eyes of a mother trying not to show worry. The kind of calm only a mom knew how to fake when everything felt uncertain. He tried to keep the truck steady, tried to focus on the small patches of road he could still see. His breath slowed, his heartbeat quickened, and yet he pushed through. Then it happened. A cough from the engine, a sharp jerk, a sputter. The truck went silent. Inside the cab, everything froze. The temperature dropped so quickly it felt like the storm had slipped through the doors. He tried the ignition, once, twice. "Nothing. You've got to be kidding me," he whispered. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice still steady, still soft. "Engine's dead, and there's no signal out here." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the storm pounding against the windows like an angry drum, the kind of wind that made a person feel very small and very human. She looked out into the swirling darkness, then back at him with a calm acceptance that didn't match the danger outside. "Well," she said, "we'll have to keep each other warm." There was no romance in her tone, no suggestion, no discomfort, just survival, just human instinct, just two people in the middle of a storm trying to stay alive. They climbed into the back seats where it felt tighter, easier to share heat. They wrapped themselves in coats and blankets, their breath mixing in the cold air. He could feel her trembling even though she tried to hide it. He wrapped a blanket across her shoulders and she nodded with quiet gratitude. The truck shook under a monster gust of wind. She closed her eyes, inhaling slowly. "You know," she said, "Adam is lucky to have you. Most kids your age wouldn't do this." He shrugged. "He dragged me into this storm." She gave a small smile, the first one he saw that night. "That's what I mean. You showed up anyway." For a moment, it didn't feel like a truck in a blizzard. It felt like a small cocoon of stillness before the storm found a new way to test them. Her hands began trembling harder. The cold was getting to her faster than it was to him. He rubbed her hands gently, trying to warm them. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but he noticed the pale shade of her lips. "I'm fine," she whispered, even though she was. Her breath shook. Her eyes glistened with something deeper than cold. "A memory. A wound. You remind me of someone," she said softly. "Who my husband." He froze, not from discomfort, but from the fragile honesty in her voice. The storm raged on outside, but inside the truck everything went still. "He passed away 2 winters ago," she whispered. "Nights like this, they bring everything back." Her voice cracked, and that was the moment things shifted. The storm outside didn't scare him anymore, but the storm inside her heart did. He moved closer, gently, offering warmth not just to her hands, but to her grief. "You don't have to talk about it," he said. "But I want to." And with that, she began to tell her story. A story that would carry them through the longest night either of them had ever lived. The wind outside wasn't just cold anymore. It was alive. It clawed at the truck, rattling every window like it wanted to. Inside, the silence grew heavier, thick with the kind of fear people only feel when nature shows its true power. He pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, trying to block the cold that kept leaking into the truck like slow poison. She gave him a grateful look. the kind mothers give when someone quietly steps in during a moment of weakness. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She stared through the frosted window at the swirling white emptiness outside, and he watched her face, pale, tired, but brave in a way that softened the sharpness of the night. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded fragile, like she was choosing every word with care. "You know," she said, "storms have a strange way of bringing back memories you try so hard to forget." He glanced at her. "You don't have to talk about anything that hurts." She shook her head slowly. "No, sometimes sharing it helps." Her breath fogged the glass as she continued. "2 winters ago, my husband didn't make it home during a storm like this. He drove alone, and by the time help came, it was too late." The young man felt a cold sink deeper inside him, one that had nothing to do with the snow. He shifted closer, placing a steady hand on her arm, not to comfort her as a friend's mom, but to comfort a human being who had carried too much alone. She didn't cry, not yet, but her voice trembled just enough to show how hard she was holding herself together. "I promised myself I'd never be out on a winter road again." She let out a breath that shook. "And yet here I am, but this time. I'm not alone." He swallowed hard, unable to find the right words. Outside, the storm hit another peak. Snow hammered the roof, the truck rocked lightly, the temperature dropped so sharply the air inside felt like ice. He could see her hands trembling again, this time uncontrollably. "Hey," he said gently, "you're freezing." "I'm fine," she whispered, but her lips were losing color. "No, you're not." He shifted, removing his jacket and wrapping it around her before she could protest. She shook her head weakly. "You'll freeze." "I'll be fine," he said. "You need it more." Their breaths mingled in the narrowing space between them. The closeness wasn't romantic, it wasn't awkward. It was simply the truth of survival, 2 people relying on the small warmth they could create. Minutes passed. Long, slow minutes where the cold pressed harder, the wind howled louder, and the world outside seemed to disappear entirely. Her head lowered, resting lightly against his shoulder, a silent surrender that said she trusted him more than she trusted the storm. She whispered, "You remind me of him." He stiffened slightly, not out of discomfort, but out of respect. "Your husband," she nodded. "He always took care of everyone else before himself." She paused, her voice tightening. "Sometimes I wonder if that's why he didn't come home." He didn't know how to answer, so he didn't. He just held her a little closer, not as a son, not as a friend, but as a person who understood the weight of loss even without having lived it. The hours stretched. The cold deepened, and their breaths grew slower as the warmth faded from the truck's interior. At one point, she shivered so violently that he instinctively wrapped both arms around her. "Stay with me," he whispered. "We're going to get through this." She closed her eyes, letting her forehead rest against his chest. "You're a good man," she murmured. "Better than you think." He didn't realize how much he needed to hear that until the words settled, but the night was far from finished testing them. A sudden sound echoed, a muffled crack from outside, then another, then another. She looked up sharply. "What was that?" He leaned closer to the window, wiping the frost with his sleeve. At first, he saw nothing, just white, endless, swirling white. Then a shadow moved. A long, slow-moving beam of light swept through the storm. He blinked, leaning in. That's a headlight." Her breath caught. "You're sure?" Another beam appeared, then faint engine noise, heavy, slow, steady. His heart kicked. "It's a snowplow," he said. "It's coming this way." But the storm swallowed sound and sight so quickly that hope felt fragile like a candle in a hurricane. She clutched his arm, not in fear, but in the desperate hope that the light wasn't just another illusion created by exhaustion. He hit the horn. Nothing. Dead. So he banged on the window with his fist, shouting through the glass even though he knew they couldn't hear him. "Over here, we're here." The light hesitated, then turned. Moving toward them, she exhaled a breath that broke into a sob of relief. But before rescue reached them, the truck shook again, hard, like something had shifted underneath. He steadied her as the chassis groaned. "We need to move carefully," he said. "If the snow around us is loose, the truck could tilt." Her eyes widened with fear, but she nodded. The snowplow's light grew stronger, sweeping across them, casting long shadows across the frozen interior. They weren't saved yet, but for the first time that night, they weren't alone. Morning arrived slowly, as if the world itself wanted to apologize for the night it had put them through. Outside the rescue station window, the storm had finally settled. The sky was pale blue, stretched over miles of snow that shimmered in the soft light. Inside, the heater hummed, warm steam rising from the cups of hot chocolate they had barely touched. She sat wrapped in a thick blanket, her breathing steady now, her cheeks warming back to their natural color. He sat across from her, watching over her the same way he had through the long, freezing night. There was no awkwardness, no distance. Only a quiet understanding that came from sharing something people rarely shared anymore, survival and sincerity. A door swung open. Adam rushed inside, snow still clinging to his hair and shoulders. His voice cracked before he even finished the first word. "Mom." She stood the moment she heard him and he ran straight into her arms. The embrace was long, relieved, and trembling at the edges. She held him with both hands as if making sure he was real. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I promise I'm okay." Adam pulled back slightly, then his eyes flicked to his best friend. The relief turned into something deeper: respect, gratitude. A quiet thank you passed between them before any words were spoken. "Did he take care of you?" Adam asked. She softened. She looked at him, then at her son. "He didn't just take care of me," she said. "He saved me." Adam's breath caught. He turned to his friend and pulled him into a hug that said everything his voice couldn't. "I knew I called the right person." They drove back once the roads cleared, slow and cautious, the world still blanketed in white. The air in the truck was warm now, but a different kind of warmth lingered between them. Not romantic, not confusing, just human, honest. A warmth born from crisis, from compassion, from seeing someone not as a stranger but as a soul. During the ride, she spoke softly from the back seat. "You know, people see snowstorms as something cruel, something dangerous, something to fear. But sometimes they bring people closer in ways life never plans." He listened quietly, every word a lesson he didn't expect to learn at his age. When they reached her home, Adam helped her out of the car, but she turned back before going inside. Her eyes held something gentle, something grateful. "Thank you," she said, "for being patient, for listening, for caring. You reminded me that kindness still exists in the world." He nodded, a little shy, a little overwhelmed. "You reminded me, too." She gave his hand a small squeeze, not dramatic, not emotional. Just human. Then she stepped inside, closing the door slowly as if sealing the memory behind her. He and Adam stood by the truck for a moment. The cold air touched their faces, but neither of them rushed. Adam looked at him with a half smile, half disbelief. "I owe you more than I can ever pay back." "You don't owe me," he said. Anyone would have done the same, but Adam shook his head. "No, not anyone, only someone with a good heart." They didn't talk much on the way back. They didn't need to. Some experiences speak for themselves. Later that night, when he finally lay in bed, the house quiet around him, he closed his eyes and let the memory of the storm settle. He remembered the cold, the fear, the silence, but more than anything, he remembered her voice cracking as she spoke about her late husband. The pain she had held alone for years, the way she leaned on him when the cold became too much. He realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes the warmth people need isn't from blankets or heaters, it comes from presence. Listening, caring, humanity shared in its simplest form. He drifted to sleep knowing he hadn't just survived a snowstorm. He had witnessed something gentle, something pure. A reminder that even in the coldest nights, true warmth still exists. And maybe that was the real rescue. The next day, when Adam texted him a simple message, "Thank you again for saving my family," he smiled quietly to himself. Because deep down he knew the truth. A storm had stranded them. Kindness had saved them. And humanity had warmed them more than any blanket ever could. If this story touched your heart, stay for more. Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for the next story, and let these moments remind you that compassion still matters in our world.